Byron, 12 minutes after 9 on this hump day, 9:12. Glad to have you on board. Speaking of our next guest and my former colleague, he has moved on to bigger things. He is currently a state senator in the 16th District, Cheshire, Prospect, Southington, Waterbury, Wolcott. He's on the Commerce Committee, Government Administrations and Elections Committee, otherwise known as GAE. He's also the ranking member. Judiciary Committee, Labor and Public Employees Committee. He's a ranking member there, too. This guy, when I talk about getting it done, and there are some legislators, I'm not going to mention their names. It wouldn't be right for me to do that. But there are legislators who fulfill the minimum requirement. Let's just put it that way. This is not one of them. In fact, even if he is not your state senator, he's out there fighting for you and the conservatives all over the state of Connecticut. It's always a privilege as we welcome into the show State Senator Rob Sampson. Senator, good morning.
Good morning, Representative. Thank you for the delightful introduction. You always take such good care of me. But name names on those people who are just getting by.
Oh, I don't want to do that. You know what? You know who they are. You know, there's people.
Yeah, I won't name the names.
No. They're on both sides. You know, of Republican and Democrats who just kind of phone it in, and maybe they've been. I don't know. Maybe been there too long or whatnot, but they fulfill the minimum requirement, and no, I don't have to go here, and I don't have to do that. And when the session is over and it's not a campaign year, they're out. You know, they're out on vacation. Not that going on vacations is bad. In fact, you need a vacation to kind of recharge the batteries after being a legislator. But you and I both know that in order to really do the job well, it's year round, whether you're in session or not.
Right, 24/7.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to believe that people would go through the effort, and it's a significant effort to run for office and get elected and to serve and not put in 100%. I've always viewed it as a tremendous opportunity. I don't know when it will end. And so I use every day to the fullest because I'm there because I believe strongly in our American principles of freedom and limited government. And I feel like we've been drifting from them. So I'm just up there all day, every day, trying to make sure that voice is heard and represented.
And you do a yeoman's job at that. Hey, really quickly, before we get into to some issues here in the state of Connecticut, I want to congratulate you on a couple of things. Number one, you have a perfect 100% grade by the CBIA on your pro-business voting record. So, big round of applause for you right there, man. Great job.
Yeah, no, I would say that I've had 100% voting record every year, whether or not they've actually scored me that way. That's a whole other thing. Because, I believe in American principles. And again, just like we said, capitalism is what built this country. And it's a shame that capitalism is a word that sometimes gets a negative reaction because I think people just don't understand what it actually means. Capitalism is nothing more than freedom. It's the free exchange of goods and services between people because they are doing it voluntarily, because they want to. I'm going to trade this money for this product with you because I benefit, and presumably you do it because you benefit. Anything other than that is not capitalism and requires the force of some entity, usually the government, leaning on one side of the transaction. And that's why capitalism, to me, is the best system, and it's also turned out to be the most productive, and our country is living proof of that.
I don't even think I could put it any better than that. But remind us all of the crazy anti-business left-wing progressive ideas that get floated in the legislature, and sadly sometimes actually even get passed in our state capitol. I know you have to hit them back right head on as the ranking member of the Labor Committee. I know you do. But remind us of some of the left-wing progressive ideas that get floated around.
Well, it's a laundry list. Yeah, I serve as the ranking member of the Labor Committee. And Gary, you know the screening process, right? Which is the kind of the behind closed door process where the leaders of the committee, the Republican and Democrat leaders, sit privately behind closed doors and actually review all the potential bills for the upcoming legislative session. And I can tell you that the screening meetings for the Labor Committee is something out of a sci-fi movie. And, you're trying to just swat down all of these, big government regulatory schemes, and they have one after another. it's hard to nail down any specific policy. I mean, this past year they passed a law that says that striking employees can collect unemployment, which is just a nonsensical concept if you think about it.
Yeah, right.
And there's thousands of other bills that come through there. And when I say thousands, I mean legitimately thousands of bills go through the legislature every year, and maybe 100 bills go through the labor committee, and the vast majority of them are bad, adding more regulations onto business and making it more difficult to survive. There's a lot of stuff, they're pushing back, because the conservative movement, I think, is winning nationally on a lot of labor stuff. Like we had the Janus decision a few years ago.
All right.
So they've been working hard to undermine that. They put in a bill, I think it was last year or the year before, that actually, and what kills me, Gary, is they try and put forward these bills saying that they are pro-worker, when in fact they're the exact opposite. They're pro-union. The workers actually don't benefit. Legislation that actually says that people have to give up their information, and municipalities that have employees have to provide the information to the union, and even let them use their equipment and their computers and their email databases and things. It's just like you're bending the scale very hard in one direction. I don't have any objection to unions existing, but they have to operate in a competitive market, and they've got to offer to potential dues-paying members some benefit. It shouldn't just be a given that if you get a job, you have to be in the union.
Well said. Listen, the Connecticut Secretary of State's office suspended supervised absentee voting in nursing homes. Why did they do that?
I'm trying not to make a snarky comment.
Yes.
Because they don't care about the
integrity
of our election process. I mean, that's the answer. I wish I could come up with something that is, more polite, but that's what it is. And it's a real shame. The governor a couple of weeks ago came out and extended the state of public health emergency once again. And obviously this has been going on because of COVID for a couple of years now. And, at some point, maybe we did have an emergency. I have always argued, and, since the very beginning, that even if the state was experiencing some sort of emergency, the state government was not. There's never been a point where the state government could not function and operate and would have it necessary to transfer a great deal of power over to one man, the governor of the state. And I've been arguing that ever since. But nonetheless, the Democrats and the governor have worked together to run the state through executive fiat. And 6 months ago, the governor was kind of afraid to do so, I think for political purposes. So he handed the reins over to the legislature to say, we're going to declare the emergency. So the Democrats on a party line vote did that. And but just a couple weeks ago, they said no. Maybe they're weak about the election coming up. Who the heck knows? Mm-hmm. So the governor did it. And when he did it, he said, I'm only doing this to preserve money we get from the federal government because we have to say we're in a state of emergency. And then turn around, not even I think within the next couple of days, the new Secretary of State, who is an appointee of the governor, because the current Secretary of State that was elected stepped down. She had some personal issues, whatever it is. So now we have the governor's appointee, not even an elected person, making a really significant policy decision, immediately after as a result of this executive power. And that decision is to no longer supervise absentee ballot voting in places like nursing homes where that's typical, where you have representatives from the town, mm-hmm. both Republican and Democrat, go there to make sure that those absentee ballots are completed, fairly and without any bias.
I didn't even know the governor could specifically authorize such a suspension, but I guess when, like you mentioned, when you're under executive orders from the governor, I guess that kind of usurps the process, the legislative process of it.
Well, there's a question on what he can and cannot do. I mean, the letter of the law is that when you have an executive authority created from a public health emergency, the governor has the power to modify, keyword modify, existing law for public health purposes. So if he can demonstrate that there's a public health reason for making a change to an existing law, he can do it. I think he's gone way beyond that in many of the things he did. Certainly the closure of businesses, that happened early on in the pandemic, was something way beyond, modifying an existing law. And what can I tell you? They have three branches of government, and it's a lesson to the people of Connecticut why you never want to have one party control everything.
Very good point. We're speaking with State Senator Rob Sampson. I don't know, but Lamont's denying any involvement in that decision. But Governor Lamont recently appointed, I think you mentioned, Mark Kohler to replace Secretary of State Denise Merrill following her resignation. And then Lamont, I guess his handpicked guy, then made this decision. Like you mentioned, it's just a huge decision for somebody, as you just articulated, Rob, that wasn't even elected. I thought Ned Lamont was only declaring a public health emergency so that Connecticut can continue to receive federal coronavirus relief money for food assistance and housing the homeless people. But Lamont never mentioned anything about suspending state rules regarding absentee balloting for nursing home residents. I don't know. Is it me, or is it? This all sounds fishy to me. I can't wrap my head around it. Something just doesn't seem right here, though.
Yeah, I don't think it's fishy at all. I think it's in our face, and I think that they feel invincible, and that they can make any change to policy in the state arbitrarily, through one man, one person executive rule if they feel like it. And they've been doing it, and they've been doing it more or less unchecked by the Republican Party and the news media. There's only been a few of us who have been really boldly, challenging this kind of decision making. I am thankful that the House and Senate Republican leaders did join Representative Master Francesco and myself when we called this out last week. But there needs to be much more outcry. We're going to stop this kind of abuse of power and this type of behavior by the executive branch. It has to be something that gets reported in the news. People have to become aware, because, as I say so often when I'm visiting with you on air, is our government operates on a representative system. People get the government that they want. And if they're either not informed or not paying attention, or they want something else, that's what they're going to get. And I feel like it's my job. And Gary, I can't thank you enough for what you do, because every day on the air, you are doing God's work, reminding people of what America is, how our value system works, why we have representative form of government. That's what we need to do. But when people understand what's going on, then we will see a change. But until then, I'm afraid we're going to keep going down this spout.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for those kind words. I'm just trying to bring to light what most people in our state aren't even aware of that's going on at the Capitol. And I understand it. I understand people are busy with their day. They're trying to make ends meet. Some have second jobs. Some kids have, they have sports, when the school begins. And I understand the busyness of a day. And, and you put on the news, and they're only going to tell one side. Maybe, if you're lucky, the opposing party or the minority party will get, a tenth of the amount of time that the majority is trying to have. It's just, people need to know the truth. And yeah, we all have opinions, and we let it seep in every now and then. That's fine. We're human beings. But my goodness, so much goes on up there that people aren't it's not even that they're tuning it out. It's not even being presented to them for them to even digest. So, listen, I kudos to you for going up there and really fighting for all of us, not just those constituents you have in your district. But I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you your opinion of the whole electorate system, the election. If so many people, so many listeners call up and say, Gary, we're just so disheartened. We don't even believe in a free election here in the United States. All I can talk about here is for Connecticut. Do you trust the ballot box? I'm just, it's one thing to have handheld absentee ballots or mail-in ballots, and I always say the more people that touch the ballot, the greater the potential for fraud. But people aren't even voting. People aren't even trusting the machines. And they're so disheartened and disenchanted by the whole process that I'm afraid that they're just not going to vote at all. And now that's not good for Republicans to do. What's your take on that?
Right. Well, that's a great question. And obviously it's a sticky one, too, because the left is very good at taking any type of commentary where anyone suggests that there's any sort of issues with our voting system in the state and trying to, pair that with, President Trump's claims that the 2020 presidential election was stolen and, the big steal and all that.
Right.
And it's very frustrating because I don't know what happened across the country. I'm not in those 49 other states. I know they have problems. I know that they've investigated things in Georgia and Pennsylvania and so forth. Arizona comes to mind. Those are states where they had significant election ballot problems and so forth. But I don't know the extent of it. I don't know what the results were. But I do know that in Connecticut, I think there's a zero chance that Trump won the state of Connecticut. It is Connecticut after all, and that election was not even close. So even if there was any sort of significant fraud in the state, I don't think there's a person in Connecticut who would claim that that the Trump law would have won Connecticut otherwise. Does that mean that there's no fraud in Connecticut? Of course not. Does that mean that we have rampant fraud in Connecticut? I don't think that's true either. But we do have problems, and I would put them into different categories. The number one problem we have is that we have laws on the books which are lousy. We have no photo ID requirement in the state of Connecticut, which is a big issue. We also allow same-day in-person voting without an ID. You can walk into a polling location and tell them, my name's John Smith, and I live on 1 Main Street, and vote without anything. You just sign an affidavit. And even that might be okay if there was a process to follow up to make sure that this was a legitimate person down the road, but we don't even have that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I could really tell you story after story about the way our system is designed. And my issue is that the Democrats, every time we go into session, we are further tearing away at whatever protocol or security measures that do exist. And they're doing it in the name of expanding access to voting. And look, that's because that's a clever argument. Oh, the Republicans are against this because they don't want people to vote. And that's silly. But I want an election that people can rely on. Your larger point they made was that people don't trust the election.
It's true.
And that's a terrible thing. And I keep saying to my colleagues when we battle and debate on these voting issues in the state is every time we take another vote that is a party line, all the Democrats yes, all the Republicans no, all you're doing is undermining the system. Because if we can't agree on the rules of the game together, then we got no legitimate game.
Excellent point. Hey, really quickly, I only have 10 seconds. Thanks for showing up to my listener luncheon at the Manhattan in Southington. We hope to have something again in October, and I hope to see you then, too. It means
I had no idea you were so popular. Oh, my God, Gary. The place was packed. If your listeners, anyone who was not there, you got to come to the next one of these. It was an unbelievable.
You're the best, man. You really are, Rob. I can't thank you enough, Senator. You have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. We got to come back.